All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan. We got major updates we're going to discuss today about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, the scandal that does not seem to be stopping anytime soon, and it just gets crazier and crazier. We're going to be reacting to some documents that were just released in the past. Well, they were released a couple days ago, but they were just found within the 3 million files just a couple days ago. And they give some interesting details surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death. So we'll be discussing those to start off the show today. And then stick around till a little bit later on, because we're going to be reacting to this absolute chaos within the Trump administration surrounding all of this, from Howard Lutnick to Pam Bondi, who just had a disastrous congressional testimony today where she just looked like an absolute fool. So we'll talk about all this today and more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.
Maybe we should improve the liberty of our own country before we seek to do so abroad. Some of us have paid attention to the fact that the expert class, including the foreign policy experts, lie all the time. The correct answer to this, of course, as it always is liberty. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and just hitting like and subscribe here on YouTube, I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you wouldn't mind going to my Instagram, X, and Spotify and giving all those a follow, I'd really appreciate that as well. Let's get into the news of the day. Again, full episode again today, going to be focused on Jeffrey Epstein and all of the wild new details that continue to come out by the hour here. We're going to start off here. I'll just throw this right up on the screen here. We're going to start off by discussing these newest documents surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death. And just for some context, Jeffrey Epstein died I'll put quotations around died because there are questions as to whether he's alive or not. That is a perfectly legitimate question at this point. Jeffrey Epstein died officially on August 10th, 2019. And he died in New York City in his prison cell. And the story is that he committed and himself from his cell. Now, this document, which was found, I forget who it was on Twitter, but somebody on Twitter pointed this out, within the 3 million files that got dumped about a week ago, this was what was found by this person on Twitter. It's a document from U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman from the U.S. Attorney's Office at the Southern District of New York, where Jeffrey Epstein was. And this seems to be some sort of a press release about Jeffrey Epstein's death from the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it says, for immediate release, August 9th, 2019, a day before Jeffrey Epstein officially died. So people were pointing this out as obviously a little bit weird. And instead of the reason this is weird, obviously, is because it seems as if from this that they were pre-planning to release this from the day before. And instead of the DOJ just coming out, or the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, instead of somebody seeing the crazy uproar from this document being released, somebody from the DOJ giving an explanation for why this was released, they just chose not to respond, as they have throughout this entire process. They are dismissing this as conspiracy kookery, even though this is perfectly legitimate to ask, why was this document announcing Jeffrey Epstein's death dated the day before he died? And to be very clear, this could be perfectly innocent. This could be a complete mistake. Who knows? This could be, instead of just having some explanation here, maybe an intern put in the wrong date, maybe somebody was typing quickly and put in the wrong date, maybe they weren't paying attention, just messed up the date. There are hundreds of innocent explanations here as to how this could have gone wrong. But instead of giving any of them, or even attempting to lie about it, they are just not responding, which is always the most guilty-seeming thing here. So that was the first one that was a little bit interesting. And then this document, this seems to be some sort of a transcript of an interview here. This is from this is from the 3 million files that were just released. It says, quote, this was another one that people found interesting. It says, quote, due to the large news media presence outside of MCC, a male OCME official called and said he would be arriving at the loading dock with a black vehicle. In order to thwart the media, blank, blank, and blank used boxes and sheets to create what appeared to be a human body, which was put into the white OCME vehicle, which the press followed, allowing the black vehicle to depart unnoticed with Epstein's body. So this transcript of some sort of interview here with somebody involved in all of this says that the prison, or whoever was handling Epstein's body, created a decoy body because the press is obviously outside this building waiting for Epstein's body to be removed and so they can get shots of all this. In order to thwart the media, they create a decoy body, load it into the back of this van, and have the media follow that van, while they simultaneously, in some other location, leave the building with Epstein's real body. So all these documents, while not proof of anything, this is of course a transcript of an interview, that's what it seems to be, and the other one being a misdated U.S. Attorney's Office statement. While these are not actual proof of anything, it is very bizarre. And what's more bizarre is the fact that nobody even seems to think they have any obligation to explain why these things were put out. They are just released with rejections galore, as you can see on this screenshot here. They're released with everyone's name redacted, so we have no idea who we would even ask about this. And they feel no obligation to explain to the public why the behavior surrounding his death was so bizarre, why so many mistakes were made, why the cameras didn't work, why the guards fell asleep, why there was a mysterious orange object moving in the background of the newest footage we have. Like, there's so many bizarre circumstances, and if there were innocent explanations, then fine. It's perfectly reasonable to think there may be legitimate explanations for why all of these things are weird. But the fact that not only are they not giving them, but they aren't even trying to lie about this, which is usually their go-to, obviously, it makes you have to wonder, what are they hiding? Why are they not interested in even discussing this? They don't even want to have the conversation, which is always a telling sign. It's, all in all, it's very bizarre. We'll move on to the last couple days here, because the last couple days, things have really ramped up with all this chaos. So the DOJ announced that they would have they would allow Congress members to have kind of come in on a rotating basis to the DOJ building and view unredacted versions of the Epstein files. They would have to leave their devices outside. They'd have to leave any recording potential technology outside the office, and they would be able to come in and use the DOJ's computers to look through certain unredacted files. So, of course, as soon as they were able to, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, the people who championed transparency in all this, were first in line to go access these files unredacted. So they just 2 days ago went to the DOJ building, went in to see the unredacted version of the files, and they came out and talked to the press, and they were like, we were told these were unredacted, but they were redacted files in the supposed unredacted collection of files here. And one of the pages that Thomas Massie randomly found was from 2019, from the original FBI investigation into all of this, and it listed out 6 what they called co-conspirators, and it listed out 6 of them, completely redacted, pictures, names, all redacted, and it stated that they were likely incriminated in child sex trafficking. This isn't Thomas Massie making anything up. This was the FBI's document that said this from 2019, back from the original FBI investigation after, right around the time that when he was arrested and then he died. This is the FBI's own language, and it was redacted. So Massie called them out on redacting those 6 names, which they weren't supposed to be able to do. And then he would go on to say that Les Wexner, Epstein's number one financer, who gave him hundreds of millions of dollars, who gave him the New York City townhouse, and access to all the Victoria's Secret models, Thomas Massie said he was one of the names on the list. And then, under pressure, the Department of Justice released the last 5 on that list, and then Ro Khanna went on the House floor and read out the names. Take a look.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Congressman Massie and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake, and now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI.
So some of the names there are obviously more well-known than others, but Les Wexner is the one to focus in on here. And I'm going to get into him in some more detail later on in the episode because I have a lot I want to talk about later on, about kind of the background of Jeffrey Epstein, the power players that really financed his whole career. But Les Wexner, just keep it in mind, he is the number one person who financed Jeffrey Epstein's entire career in what they called tax advice, but really his entire career as a CIA, Mossad, likely asset, some sort of floating intelligence asset. And Les Wexner gave him, this billionaire, founder of Victoria's Secret, Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his billions of dollars of net worth. He gifted him hundreds of millions of dollars, and he even gifted him the New York City townhouse that Jeffrey Epstein would go on to live in. So Les Wexner, he's the richest guy in Ohio. There have been many people who say Ohio politics essentially run through Les Wexner, which we'll get to when we talk about J.D. Vance, so hold on till later on in the episode for that. This guy was mentioned here and was redacted by the DOJ. Now, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General and bumbling fool Todd Blanche would respond to Thomas Massey on Twitter and say, the Department of Justice named Les Wexner thousands of times throughout these files. They have nothing to hide. Okay, the point is that you redacted his name and his picture on the file that lists him as a co-conspirator in child sex trafficking. Is that not a pretty important detail? Like, this is what, we'll get into Pam Bondi in a second, because this is the attitude I'm talking about from people like Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel. These people in powerful positions who are so arrogant, feel like they don't have to answer to anybody, and they have this smarmy attitude, this arrogance to them, where they feel like they can talk down to people like Thomas Massey or any one of these people in Congress. They can just talk down to them, threaten them, try to make them look like idiots somehow, as they are simultaneously engaged in the most blatant and obvious cover-up of high crimes that we've seen in modern history. The audacity is unbelievable. But we'll get in here to the hearings of the last 2 days, because this is really something else. Howard Lutnick, so for background, I talked about this a couple episodes ago. Howard Lutnick is the Commerce Secretary under the Trump administration. Howard Lutnick knew Jeffrey Epstein for years. Howard Lutnick was interviewed by the New York Post a couple months back about, and one of the questions they asked him about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And in this interview, he would go on emphatically to say that he cut off ties with him. He was next door neighbors with Epstein. And in this interview, he said he cut off ties with him in 2005 after he walked into his apartment and learned he was a creepy guy, got a really bad feeling, and him and his wife both agreed they would never meet with this guy or be in the same room as this guy ever again. It was one and done. That was what Howard Lutnick said. Well, it turns out that Howard Lutnick not only lied and did continue a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for years, but he did so after he was already convicted of soliciting sex from a minor and was a convicted sex offender. Howard Lutnick still remained in contact with him. He also signed on to the same business deal as him. Their signatures were on back-to-back pages of this business deal. He also, Jeffrey Epstein gave a donation to some foundation in honor of Howard Lutnick. Why would you do that unless you were friendly with him? And in the most damning accusation and now admission of all from Howard Lutnick in 2012, again, years after Epstein was convicted as a sex offender, Howard Lutnick went to his island with his family for lunch This is what Howard Lutnick had to say about this. This is what he had to say for himself in a congressional testimony just yesterday. Take a look.
I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary.
Just for reference, now that we have the official story on the table of Howard Lutnick's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and we know now that he visited the island in 2012, here's just, for reference, here was the original story from Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick as to how his relationship with Epstein began and ended. Take a look.
And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Really? So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross. Oh. And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of a voice.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
Well, those are significantly different stories, are they not? So we went from one and absolutely done to, no, not only was I not done, not only did I stay in contact with him for about a decade after that, but also I brought my family, my wife and kids and my nannies to his island. How can we trust a government official that lies to us that blatantly? I mean, it's the way he looked into the camera so firmly and so confidently and told a flat out lie about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, fire him. What are we doing here? How is our government staffed to the top with these idiots, these bumbling fools that have no problem with lying to the public? Like, that confidently, laughing and smiling as he did it, not even looking the slightest bit unconfident, not even looking the slightest bit nervous as he's telling a complete and total lie to the public. It's unreal. So that's Howard Lutnick. He needs to be fired immediately. And if he's not going to get fired, impeach him immediately. It's unbelievable. But today, the drama continued, and it's really something else. This is Pam Bondi. So Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, the ringleader, really, of this massive cover-up, Pam Bondi was brought in today to the House of Representatives to testify on the latest controversies and the drama surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And, oh my goodness, it's like the craziest thing you'll ever watch. I would urge everyone to go watch at least a couple clips past what I'm going to show you here, because as we were talking about with Lutnick, the brazenness in which these people lie, Pam Bondi is an even worse offender, because not only does she lie and openly, like, verifiably lie throughout this entire thing, but she doesn't even bother to do it while looking as confident as Howard Lutnick did. She is obviously lying. She knows we know she's lying. She knows we know she knows she's lying. And she is still going to go out there and repeat this terrible set of talking points endlessly, refuse to answer a single question, and engage in this struggle session and the most pathetic lack of accountability you will ever witness from anybody ever. Here's Pam Bondi when Thomas Massie absolutely destroys her on her obvious hypocrisy and her obvious lies throughout this entire thing. Take a look.
I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document. Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr. Chairman. This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So yes. I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you
in.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on to these matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
this is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's where the
I want to know at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wexner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
So, of course, Thomas Massey's obviously the one in the right in this situation. Pam Bondi with the lowest IQ response of all time. It's crazy this person is the Attorney General, to be completely honest. With low IQ, slop responses like that. You have Trump derangement syndrome. This is the most transparent administration in history. Like, the stupidest statements you'll ever hear from a government official comes out of Pam Bondi's mouth right there. This goes back to the whole idea. The idea that these people like Pam Bondi have any legitimate authority, these absolute bumbling idiots like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Howard Lutnick. In what sane system, in what universe would these fools rise to the top of power? These idiots who don't even understand the letter of the law that's written, the most plainly written law that's ever been written, that Thomas Massey is putting on the screen right there. And all she has to respond to, the literal word of the law that Massey drafted up, all she has to respond to is this guy got Trump derangement syndrome. So stupid, so low IQ. And of course, these clapping seals on Twitter will eat it up because they have no principles at all. They all claim to be constitutional conservatives and right-wingers when Thomas Massey is more right-wing than any of them. They all endlessly cheer for reckless government spending and big government cover-ups like this and foreign wars, and they claim to be conservatives. It's absolutely pathetic. And Thomas Massey correctly calls her out on her garbage in this entire hearing. And then here's Thomas Massey after the hearing, again, correctly calling out the fact that she did not come with the intention of answering any questions. She's a disgrace to her office. This is Thomas Massey. Take a look.
I provided the evidence today that shows that his statements were false under oath. Kash Patel's statements were false. They are in possession. They were in possession at the time, and they're still in possession of evidence that other men participated in the sex trafficking.
Attorney General Bondi didn't seem to directly answer that question. I mean, what do you make of what she did say?
She didn't answer anything. She came here just ready to talk about the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, which
seems kind of crazy to me.
So Massey is referencing two things here. The first one, Kash Patel, and we showed it in that longer video from just a couple seconds ago. Kash Patel knowingly lied to Congress. Like, if he didn't know, then needs to be fired for incompetence. But he told a falsehood in front of Congress a couple months back when he said they were not in possession of any credible evidence that Jeffrey Epstein conspired with anybody during this whole operation. That was what Kash Patel said a couple months back. And Thomas Massey correctly today, yes, played the video that shows him saying that a couple months ago, and then showed the evidence to Pam Bondi's face that shows Kash Patel was lying when he said that. Because not only did they have evidence to show that he was conspiring with other people and trafficking these women to other people, besides him and Ghislaine Maxwell, the evidence is overwhelming. To say that Kash Patel was telling the truth there and go along with Kash Patel's narrative about all this means you are incredibly ignorant and have no idea what you are talking about. You haven't even bothered to look into this case for 10 seconds. Like, obviously there were other people involved here. Obviously. And the second thing Massey references there is Pam Bondi bringing up the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ for no reason during this committee hearing. She randomly throughout the hearing would deflect and start talking about completely off-topic things because she does not want to answer any of these questions. So here's the clip of her doing just that earlier on in the hearing. I believe it was before Massey went. But just randomly in the middle of an answer, she just pivots to talking about the success of the Dow Jones in the middle of this hearing. Take a look.
He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over, the Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan,
She is just the most pathetic excuse for an attorney general I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's saying a lot, having had Merrick Garland as the attorney general just a couple years ago. She's pathetic. How are you? It's so blatant. And again, with the attitude, this arrogance that they all have, while brazenly lying and openly, verifiably lying repeatedly, the attitude that you need, the arrogance you need to have to step up and sit in front of this committee and have such an attitude about, while just lying and deflecting openly, repeatedly. The Dow Jones, we're in the middle of a hearing about Jeffrey Epstein, and she thinks it's good optics to just pivot out of nowhere from just a second ago, getting angry with everybody because they didn't say anything to Merrick Garland. Okay, true, whatever. You're the attorney general now. If you want accountability, you're the attorney general. Unless you obviously don't care about accountability. But then go from that to pivoting to listing off financial statistics and stock market numbers. She thinks that's good optics. And it's not the most obvious pivot in the world. Even when they are trying to craft up good lies, they can't do it. It's unreal. And this was her later on. She had this vicious back and forth with this representative who was asking her about the Epstein files. This is what she had to say at first to this representative. Take a look.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Will be
Chair.
in order.
I am not asking trick questions here. The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell.
Obviously, she got absolutely bodied right there. Again, I have no idea who that woman was, that representative, and I probably don't agree with her on much. But this is the situation now. They put themselves in this mess. This is gonna affect the midterms. This is gonna affect J.D. Vance. He's gonna have to answer for this in 2028. The Republicans, the Trump administration, did this to themselves. They gave the Democrats the most easy, obvious win on this topic. That used to be our topic. That used to be the right's topic. The Epstein files. And the Trump government did this to themselves. I mean, they have staffed the entire cabinet with Epstein cronies. I mean, literally, you see Howard Lutnick. They have these idiots running the DOJ and FBI, and they have no response to anything. They have no response to any of these perfectly legitimate questions that are being asked of Pam Bondi here. So everything that's coming out of this, every piece of, every inconvenience that comes from this electorally for the Republicans, they absolutely have it coming. They did it to themselves. This is an entirely self-inflicted wound. Entirely. So this was also, with that, and speaking of this congresswoman, Pam Bondi, who again has absolutely nothing when it comes to the Epstein files. She has nothing to say because she's obviously engaged in this massive cover-up and can't defend it. So she decides to go to personal attacks. And what more classic for a Republican political personality? What more classic of an attack than anti-Semitism? She attacks this congresswoman for supposed anti-Semitism. And this congresswoman, by the way, is Jewish. Take a look.
Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once when he was.
Weak sauce.
Also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is
Jewish. I just want to be clear. Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust? Really?
The committee will be in order.
The fact that this administration somehow finds a way, every opportunity to bring up anti-Semitism and support for Israel in every situation, no matter how much or how little the situation has to do with that topic, it's astonishing. That it's very obvious who this administration is working for, and it's Israel. So, I mean, how do you bring up anti-Semitism just out of the blue to a Jewish congresswoman who is asking you about an entirely different topic? It's crazy. Again, it's the most embarrassing display for the Trump administration that I think I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. How she is not fired, I have no idea. Now, to end off the episode, I do want to get into some detail here about the Epstein network, because this is what I see a lot of people who comment on these things missing. People are getting kind of caught up, and justifiably so, in the crazy headlines, the graphic details, and they're kind of missing the overarching story here, which is that Epstein had a major network of rich and powerful people at his disposal that facilitated his entire career. The two biggest ones, which we'll get into some of the details here, the two biggest ones were Les Wexner and Leon Black, two billionaires. Les Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret, richest man in the state of Ohio. Les Wexner, he gave Jeffrey Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars in gifts, gave him power of attorney over his billions of dollars of net worth, gave him access to models from Victoria's Secret, gave him access to his rich network of powerful friends, and gave Jeffrey Epstein a New York City townhouse as a gift. That townhouse where Jeffrey Epstein would host his massive parties. So this is the guy that this is the guy that Pam Bondi and the DOJ redacted on a list of 6 co-conspirators in the Jeffrey Epstein case from back in 2019. That's Les Wexner, who Thomas Massie just helped to expose as someone the FBI named as a potential co-conspirator. So that's Les Wexner. He also has connections to the Israeli government. He's a very powerful figure, the most powerful person in Ohio politics, which is important. We'll get to that in a second. There's also Leon Black, another billionaire, big businessman. He has a partner in his businesses named Mark Rowan. Mark Rowan was just appointed by Donald Trump to the Board of Peace. Mark Rowan is he's a big tech guy, very involved. He's head of the Apollo Management Group, Apollo Global Management. He's now on the Board of Peace, and he is heavily involved in what Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are doing, really Jared Kushner, in planning this futuristic city on top of the rubble in Gaza. This is what Mark Rowan, the business partner of Jeffrey Epstein's facilitator, Leon Black, has been appointed to. Trump appointed him to the Board of Peace. So that's what Mark Rowan is up to. Leon Black's business partner, Leon Black, again, having been the facilitator of Jeffrey Epstein, major funder, gifted Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars, and also gave him access to his rich and powerful friends. Again, for the excuse of tax advice. That's Leon Black. Now, Leon Black's son, Benjamin Black, he's the CEO, or he just got appointed by Donald Trump to be CEO of the International Development Finance Corporation. Trump appointed Leon Black's son to this board. And this board is involved with facilitating funding for private foreign policy projects on behalf of the U.S. government. But it's done privately. He facilitates funds for these things. And they are very involved in a lot of policy regarding aid to Gaza, which they are trying to cut off. So this is the network here. We have Leon Black, a man who funded Jeffrey Epstein to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. He has his business partner, Mark Rowan, who is now on the Gaza Board of Peace. And his son, Benjamin Black, is now on the head of the International Development Finance Corporation, appointed by Donald Trump, and is featured in a picture with Donald Trump, just as of a couple months ago in the Oval Office. Another man to note here is Ronald Lauder. Ronald Lauder is very close to the people at the World Economic Forum. He's another big businessman, a friend of Donald Trump's. Ronald Lauder is named in the files hundreds and hundreds of times, knew Jeffrey Epstein very well. Ronald Lauder's son-in-law, Kevin Warsh, was just named to be the head of the Federal Reserve. Kevin Warsh, Trump just nominated him to be the head of the Federal Reserve. So this is the network here. Another man who's named in there a bunch of times, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, again, we've mentioned him a ton of times here on the show. He's the founder of Palantir, the technology, the mass surveillance drone military technology company, Palantir, which we exposed it a couple episodes ago. We had Jeffrey Epstein, friends with Peter Thiel, and Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister. Epstein was trying to get Ehud Barak onto the Palantir board under Peter Thiel. This is the connections here. Peter Thiel also is the number one financier. He's the number one donor to J.D. Vance's career. $15 million in 2022 for J.D. Vance's Senate race in Ohio. Ohio, again, being the state where Leslie Wexner lives. Les Wexner, it was said by really the number one scholar on all of this. I have her book back here. She's really the number one Epstein scholar, Whitney Webb. She did an interview recently where she says that Les Wexner in Ohio politics, you can't really do much in Ohio politics unless you have the good graces of Les Wexner. J.D. Vance won the Senate race in Ohio. It's been rumored, and this is, again, Whitney Webb said this, that it's been rumored that Les Wexner hosted a fundraiser for J.D. Vance at his house during that Senate campaign. Les Wexner, again, the man who gave Jeffrey Epstein complete power of attorney over his billions of dollars of net worth. J.D. Vance is planning on running in 2028, likely with the funding of Peter Thiel. This is the network here. These are the connections. This is the Epstein network, the web of people that is still very much intact here. The people who funded Jeffrey Epstein, the people who, their sons, are now on major boards involving foreign policy and doing Israel's bidding, appointed by Donald Trump. This is what we're dealing with here. And this showing from Pam Bondi today, this is not accountability. I'm sorry to tell you. Accountability means we question all of these people to what they knew and when they knew it. And why someone like Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his billions of dollars. This is what we have to get to the bottom of here. And this is why this is not going to go away, no matter how much they want it to. We will not let this go away. We're not going to stop talking about this. This scandal is bigger than anyone's even thinking. So that's where we'll leave it off for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to go down below, like and subscribe if you want more updates on this whole situation, and of course the rest of political news. So that's where we'll leave it off for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.